How do everybody, and I hope you're having a lovely Sunday afternoon. I've got an interesting story here, which is showing that the Metropolitan Police are now getting their noses rubbed in diversity finally, and they are basically getting the consequences of their actions delivered on their doorstep. So I shall read the headline for you, and then we shall get into the story. Metropolitan Police receives just 6 applications in latest armed officer recruitment drive as hundreds quit after cop charged with murder of Chris Kaba. Now, I believe the Chris Kaba case was the one where the police were chasing an individual in a high-speed pursuit around the city in an evening. He's drove down a cul-de-sac. Basically, the police have then blocked off the road. I'm going off memory here, so we could read the story and find out I'm completely wrong, but I do believe this is right. And then he's turned the car around inside the cul-de-sac, and he's then aimed at the police barricade and tried to drive his way out. Now, whether or not he's actually aimed at the police specifically, or he's just aimed at the cars to try and get out, I don't know. And I guess that's part of what the court case is about. But what he has effectively done is turned his vehicle into a lethal weapon. And the police officer at the time has had to make a snap decision and has chosen to shoot the driver of the vehicle. Now, I'm a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, so I'm not claiming to be an expert in this, but I do believe that I have at the very least, and we may call an educated opinion on the matter, because I do think that although I came under different rules, that being the law of armed conflict, I do believe it essentially works out the same for what the police go under and what we as soldiers would have gone under, which effectively is you do not shoot at somebody unless you genuinely believe that there is a threat to either your own life or other people's lives. So to give you a quick example, if somebody's got, say, an explosive in the hand, or a Molotov cocktail, or a hand grenade, whatever, whilst it's in their hand, and you believe that they're going to turn that into a weapon, or they have, say, for example, their hand is reaching to pull the pin out on the grenade, or they are reaching a lighter up to the filament of the bottle to set fire to it, and if they then cock their hand to throw it, you can shoot them. But once that device has left their hand, and if they have no other, you believe they have no other weapons on them after that, they then are not to be considered a threat. So after it's left their hand, you then can't shoot them. And I believe it'd be very. I am oversimplifying it here for ease of understanding, but basically what it comes down to. So, for example, you could shoot somebody with a mobile phone because they could be using that mobile phone to call in indirect fire or to set up ambushes further down the road. So that's what gets called dicking, or that person is a dicker. So you can shoot a dicker because they are effectively using that mobile phone as a weapon, although it isn't traditionally considered a weapon, as an example. So it does start getting more complicated like that, but that's again still very oversimplified. And I do believe that the police in this case would have been under very similar choice, which is he may not have been necessarily aiming that weapon at the police as a weapon, but that is incidentally, that vehicle is still a weapon because he's aiming it at the police, whether he was intending that to be a weapon or not. But not only that, if he's so reckless that he's willing to drive through that police barricade with individuals behind it, which could cause serious harm and or death, what would he then do once he's got away from the police? Because he's going to be in full panic mode in the car, flying around the streets late at night, could be smashing into other cars, running over pedestrians, etc., etc. So I don't believe in that circumstance that the police have actually done anything wrong. I'm fully support the police. But the point of this is that this firearms officer has shot Chris Kaba, and they basically. They've just tried to ruin this guy's life, and I think they are going to be. I think the courts are pushing to have his name released, even though it hasn't even been confirmed whether he's killed the guy or not, murdered him or not. So let's get on with the story. So Metropolitan Police received just 6 applicants during its most recent armed forces recruitment drive, as hundreds quit following an officer being charged with the murder of Chris Kaba. The authorised firearms officers, AFO, is made up of around 2,500 Met police officers who work as volunteers for no extra pay. Now that's new to me because I thought being an armed officer wasn't necessarily, although they do volunteer for it, I thought it was a specialised job role which got certain perks and extra pay for doing that, because of all the extra things that duties that they have to engage in. And for every single bullet that they fire, they have to go through reams and reams of paperwork afterwards for every discharge. It's a lot of work, really, what they have to do. And I think they are a lot stricter than the military are in what they can fire at. But again, that's to do with threat level. So when you're in an active war zone, you've got a reasonable assumption that when you see somebody engaging in particular behaviours, it's probably going to be likely that it's dangerous, and you've got it's within reason. Whereas when you're walking around, say, the streets of London, well, I don't know now actually with London, but I don't know, around a village somewhere, a quaint village, you see somebody with a shotgun, are they really going to be committing crimes with that shotgun, or is it a farmer going out doing vermin control, or somebody hunting pigeons or something? You know, so there's a lot less of a justification for necessarily shooting at people in the United Kingdom. Well, again, I mean that could be up for debate, I suppose, in a city, London or Birmingham, places like that. But that's for people in the courts to decide that whether I'm correct there or not. So anyway, on top of the half a dozen who applied to join the Specialist Firearms Command, more than 250 AFOs left the unit between April and December last year. I mean, that's 10% of. So they've had like 6 applicants to 2,500. I mean, Christ, you're talking like points of a percentile of replacement there, whereas they've lost 10% in a year. That's absolutely crazy, unsustainable. And you know what? Totally unsurprising, very predictable. With around 1 in 10 of the members quitting, Britain's largest police force is concerned its Air Force officers will be unable to meet their commitments to keep London streets safe by patrolling the capital 24/7. Well, this is, as I've discussed in other videos, we are just seeing the complete collapse of society in the UK, and it all comes down to middle management and the managerial elite that are in our country. They've turned us into a bureaucratic nightmare where everything has to be a flow chart. You've got to follow a flow chart for everything. But the real world doesn't work like an office or a factory, and you can't legislate like they've tried to do. And it's what ended up leading to the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was everything being over legislated for, and some massive atrocities happened in the Soviet Union due to people trying to plan things against the natural order of how things actually work. Literally turned like thousands and thousands of square miles of fertile farmland into assaulted desert because they redirected a river for cotton production, and there's a salt water lake, and it's dried up. So now you've got all this salt that's just there, exposed to the elements, getting blown by these strong winds, and it's just covering thousands and thousands of square miles of, as I say, what was previously fertile farmland. Just totally destroyed everything. So it's what managerial people do. They destroy everything. With the pet projects, we're seeing it with the airline industry as well, with the state of airplanes now, because of all the diversity that they're forcing into it rather than competency, because they're all chasing quotas now, and they're sacrificing people's safety on the pyre of ideology. So anyway, in contrast to the recent departure, only 22 armed officers left in the 12-month period leading up to March 2023. I mean, that's absolutely effing insane. That is insane. 10 times the amount left the year after. That's crazy. The Sunday Telegraph reports that the recruitment drive had become so difficult that the force is now inviting officers who are still on probation to apply, although they will have to be fully qualified before they can go out patrol. I mean, again, I don't fully understand how the police force works. What I think what they mean by being on probation is when you're a new police officer, but you're still in the probationary period, which may be a number of years before you're deemed to be a fully competent officer, able to go out on your own. But again, I mean, that's just asking for trouble, because you're then getting people who are underqualified or not competent enough. And I don't think, once you pass your probation, I don't think to be a firearms officer, I still don't think you'd be competent enough then to go out then doing the extra responsibilities of a firearm officer. You need time to learn that, especially with a lot of these officers who are coming out of university now with no life experience. Once upon a time, there used to be a lot of ex-forces guys, so they'd already been in a lot of high-stress situations for many, many years. So a lot of that stuff was just transferable skills and knowledge. But now you're getting people with no life skills. They've not worked really in any sort of industry. They've never dealt with the general public before. And then all of a sudden, they're coming out of this probation period, and you're putting a firearm in their hand. That's absolutely madness, man. Absolute madness. This is going to lead to even more problems down the road. Because again, it's people with bright ideas who have no experience in an industry dictating how that industry is run. Just craziness. A firearms source told the Telegraph, "It is no surprise that officers are not applying to join the armed policing. They look at what is going on and they quite rightly ask themselves, is it worth it?" I mean, that is exactly it. People are going to look after numero uno first. Why would you take on all that responsibility and all of that, all your reputation getting scrutinised, if you then, rightly so, shoot a minority who is engaging in criminal activity, and the media and various MPs decide to label you as a racist for it, and it all gets dragged through the courts, it's all over national news, your name is mud, your future is in tatters, all because you did your job as you were trained. I mean, it's just disgusting. Why would anybody want to engage in that? Like, seriously, I wouldn't. Absolutely, F that. They can stick it where the sun don't shine. The question is if it's worth joining follows the growing repercussions the force is feeling since the murder of Chris Kaba. I mean, it's been happening since before. I mean, you can take it all the way back to Stephen Lawrence, you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, he was wrongly murdered. But the absolute song and dance that they made out of Stephen Lawrence compared to, say, the grooming gangs victims. You know, how many... Stephen Lawrence's parents are in the House of Lords now. How many of those victims of grooming gangs' parents are in the House of Lords? Not one of them. How many of them have got special charities and special laws named after them? Not one of them. You know, it's the double. This whole thing is nothing new. It's been going on for decades, absolute decades. The officer known with Mr. Kaba, an unarmed black man, died after being shot in the head in Stratham Hill, South London, in September 2022. I wish it had told us a bit more about that, but I'll probably have a look at it after this and write in the descriptions if I was right or not. So the officer charged with his murder is known only as NX121, but it's expected to be named after a court hearing next month, causing further discontent in the Met Specialist Firearms Unit. I think a lot of officers who are possibly sitting on the fence will be waiting to see if he does get named or not. And I imagine if he does get named publicly, we'll start seeing even more officers handing in the guns. And we may actually start seeing a lot of officers leaving the force as well. Because as we've seen with things like the Palestine protests and other such things, this will creep into other parts of the policing as well. So it'll then start creeping into like officers arresting people and things like that, or they'll start getting accused of racially profiling, and then it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So in September last year, dozens handed their weapons in to protest over the decision to charge a colleague with murder, while hundreds more have quit the force amid widespread anger in the force. Yep. After a slew of autumn resignations led to the army being put on standby, Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley pledged to push for new safeguards, including fewer and speedier investigations into alleged police wrongdoing. I mean, can the army actually do anything at this rate? Because they've got massive under recruitment as well. They are tens of thousands below where they're supposed to be. You know, so what are the army going to do? They can't do anything. But they're being committed to the Eastern Front at the moment. They're in places like we got some like I think up to 10,000 troops in Latvia. You know, waiting for NATO to give it the go ahead to invade Russia. You know, because let's be honest, that's what's happening. Don't kid yourself, especially with all the talk of conscription at the moment. We are going to be going to war with Russia in the near to mid future. And when I say mid future, I mean up to 5 years. We will be going to war with Russia. Absolutely, do not kid yourself about it. And that's why they're trying to normalise people joining the army again. And that's why they're talking about recruitment problems and things. And it's also why they're trying to clamp down now on the castigation of heterosexual white men so much. And why we see so many politicians come out against it. Because they realise that they are in the poo-poo. And they need to start getting working class white males back into the forces again. To give their lives for the managerial elite. After the slew of autumn... Oh, I've already read that. So Detective Chief Superintendent Chairman Brayan from the Specialist Firearms Command said, "We know many firearms officers are concerned about how the role could impact them and their families, and we are pleased the Home Office is carrying out a review into police accountability." Well, that's about as much use as writing it on your roll of toilet paper at home, because let's be honest, the Home Office is going to be under new control next year, isn't it? Or even the end of this year. So we're going to see Keir Starmer in charge. And do you think he's going to be back in the police when it comes to murdering of people with higher melanin counts in the skin than me? Absolutely not. Labour are going to be handing the country over to all minority interests within the first year of getting into power. We are in for a wild ride coming. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you found that interesting. I mean, we're coming up to 15 minutes, so it's long enough anyway. I really found that interesting or insightful, informative. If you have, please like, subscribe, put a comment below. I love reading your comments, and I do always try to write back as quick as I can. Even if you don't agree with me, please do write to me, because I'm not a closed mind. I am actually reasonable and open to having my opinions changed if you're compelling and your argument is strong enough. So anyway, thanks for that. Take care. Goodbye.